keen-eyed Thunderbirds viewers may have noticed that in the episode Terror in New York City, the characters of reporter Ned Cook and his cameraman Joe are suddenly portrayed by different puppets during the shot where they both fall into the subsidence during the Empire State Building move. In that shot of them falling down the rock face, Joe is now being played by the puppet that played Tintin's fellow passenger on the Fire Flash in Trapped in the Sky, whilst Ned almost, and I'm stressing almost when we're not absolutely certain, looks like he might be a rewigged Troy Tempest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
interesting.
Why did they swap the puppets out for that shot? Well, for much the same reason, Scott doubled for Eddie Hausman. It was to prevent the Ned and Joe puppets from being damaged in the fall. And it was a good thing they did, because Joe's stunt double smashes his face on the way down, causing part of the back of his head to fall off, exposing the puppet's head's internal mechanisms. Creepy.
You're joking. Oh.
Yeah. Now, this wasn't damage caused by the fall as such, because the heads were actually built with detachable sections on the backs of their skulls to allow puppeteers to get in case they needed to do repairs on the mechanism. These sections were held in place by magnets, and the join was then covered by the puppet's hair, much like on the back of my head. So in the case of the stunt Joe, it was the sheer force of the impact of his head hitting the rocks that sends the detachable part of the skull spinning out of shot. But still, quite dark when you think about that as a visual.
It really is, yes.
There is another example of this in the Joe 90 episode Child of the Sun God, when Joe confronts that episode's criminal mastermind, who's played by none other than former Spectrum officer Captain Oka. Oka subsequently falls to his death in the ensuing shootout, as only fair, and as the puppet falls, his head impacts the rock on the cliff face, and the head plate is knocked off once again. But because the shot is a bit darker and Oka's a bit further away from the camera than Stunt Joe was, it almost looks like he loses his toupee during the fall rather than the piece of his skull. So that's nice, isn't it? Now, we think, more emphasis there, we think that earlier puppets may have used hinges rather than magnets at the back of the skull, as there's an image of Mike Mercury standing next to a guest puppet of Maxie from the Supercar episode The White Line, where the back of Maxie's skull opens on a hinge to reveal the inside. So it's quite an unsettling image, though, as it almost looks like Maxie is sitting in a barber's chair and Mike Mercury is some kind of mad barber who cuts open his customers' heads. Anyway, we should have saved this fab back for Halloween, really, shouldn't we?
Yes, we really should, absolutely. A little bit early with this one, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's grim, isn't it? But these things happen. And I guess they thought, the speed of the shot, the kiddies aren't going to be watching the telly going, oh my God, the back of his head. It's just left up to grown men 50 years later to point these things out instead.
That's creepy. I'm not sure I like that at all. It does remind me rather of Rob Thurtle as a character from Space Precinct. I think it was Joe Moore in the episode Body and Soul. And he has a toupee fitted. He was a Tarn with a toupee. And they reshot a scene several times because Rob had the great idea of, can I run down the corridor and flap my head around so that the toupee is very obvious, which they did. And it was hilarious.
With hilarious consequences, as they say.
Exactly. That's
brilliant.
Right, yeah. Not quite as upsetting as a hinged piece of someone's skull flying off as they fall out of shot.
Yep. Well, sometimes skull flaps fall off, so that's life.